everybody. Man-Child here, and alongside me, this guy. Talking all things Giants today. We are inside the Giants with the football grump from the Giants Nation podcast among his many escapades. And we are in the heat of battle, dare I say, of preseason football. We are presented today by Northeast Roofing Professionals. Today's video brought to you by our friends at Sharkies. We'll hear from them in just a little bit. Grump, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me back. Always happy to talk Giants football. And, man, we're right there, man. We're in the middle of the preseason. Giants had a joint practice today. They got a game on Saturday. I can taste football. It's so close.
I thought these joint practices were supposed to be friendlies, as they say. You know, like when they play in soccer and they play the friendlies, you know, leading up to the World Cup. Well, it wasn't so friendly, Grump. As a matter of fact, some major brawls breaking out, and both coaches literally had set rules that they would remove guys that threw punches, and several Giants and several Dolphins had to be removed from the practice, or at least temporarily taken out of the scrimmage game that they were having of some sort in order to calm down the tempers. These joint practices are getting kind of violent.
Hey, man, I normally like practice fights when it's between your own guys. Because there's some level of restraint when it's between your own guys. These joint practice fights could get out of hand. As far as I understand, there were a lot today, but nothing truly out of control. Like every skirmish kind of, got under control pretty quickly. But it's always interesting when you see guys like Josh Azudu, who are, more or less buttoned up football players getting involved, and Jameis Winston being involved in the middle of stuff. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I was telling you before we started recording the pod here today, the Dallas Cowboys and New Orleans Saints, who had several kind of brawlish things, I think sounded a lot worse than what happened with the Giants today, with the Giants and the Dolphins. $500,000 each side was fined $500,000. So the NFL now getting involved in the fine business. I've never heard of this in my life. Give me your thoughts on fines in joint practices. Should this be a level that the NFL should stoop to? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look into specifically what happened at the Cowboys and Saints practice to fully form an opinion on it. But in general, if the fines are levied to the teams and the teams have to pay it, then that sort of makes a little bit of sense to me if it's out of control. But in general, I'm not a big fan of the NFL doling out heavy fines to players for things that are football adjacent. I don't know. I'm sure you've played football in some capacity in your life. Like these sort of things in practice, especially, I feel like fights are more common than in games because you're not really live all the way. And when you're live all the way, you kind of find out whether or not you won a physical altercation just by the nature of the game. When it's in practice and you're popping each other, but not do full tackles, and there's some stuff along the sidelines, I think it's natural to get annoyed and frustrated with the rules of practice. And so tempers kind of flare a little bit more there. I would have to really look into that because I've never heard of the NFL fining teams for joint practice fights before either. That seems new.
Yeah, and usually nothing happens in these skirmishes anyway because everybody's wearing pads and helmets. And, you're just grabbing each other's face masks and there's some shoving. And it's pretty hard to land a punch when a guy is wearing a helmet. But nonetheless, you don't want to see it. And John Harbaugh and Jeff Hafley, the two head coaches of these two teams in their joint practices today, set some rules because you don't have, quote, officials there, handling the rules. And as a result, some guys were asked, dare I say, to sit and cool down for a little bit after a few of these skirmishes, including Jameis Winston, Josh Azudu, a couple of Giants getting involved in these skirmishes who will be named here or were named in the piece that some of the beat writers put out just a little while ago. All right, let's talk about a busy week, Football Grump, for the Giants, because it has been a busy week, and we don't usually see teams making a lot of moves at this point other than cutting players. But the Giants went out and picked up a player, and they made a trade. Let's start with the trade first. The Giants trading Daniel Faalele, a guy that they picked up during the offseason. They only owe him less than $200,000 based on how the trade worked out, and they ended up getting a sixth-round pick for him, and it didn't look like he was either going to make the roster or certainly not be a factor in the rotation. Talk about the Giants getting some value for a guy who looked like he might not play at all or not that much for the Giants. Pretty cool.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around this one. So, Daniel Faalele coming to the Giants initially for the very small deal that he got made a lot of sense. He's quite literally a John Harbaugh guy coming from the Ravens. He was a high pick. He's a big-bodied guy that they're moving to the interior. but it never quite translated. So it made sense that it was a small contract, and it made sense that John Harbaugh was going to give it one last shot. It continued to make sense that they were trying to move off of him. We watched the preseason game, and for me, I didn't think someone could fall below Evan Neal in the depth chart, but he absolutely did. That's like it's without question. It wasn't close. Daniel Faalele had a terrible preseason game. He was letting guys get right by him. To me, he was like the 11th or 12th offensive lineman on the depth chart, which is really far low. I don't know of any team that keeps 11 or 12 offensive linemen. Even 10 is kind of a stretch.
Right.
So getting rid of him made sense. I cannot believe they found a trade partner and that it was something as significant as a 6th round pick. I mean, even getting a 7th round pick for him is, I would have thought that it would be tied to, like some playing time incentive in order to complete the trade or something like that. There were no conditions with this trade.
No stipulations.
6th round pick. I don't know. It seems odd to me that they were able to get that much, but I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth at all. This is a good collaboration of John Harbaugh bringing in somebody for nothing and Joe Schoen being able to get what he could get for it, which is incredible. So this was a win all around for coach and GM, in my opinion.
Yeah, Joe Schoen deserves some credit, man. He gets so much flack. Let's give him a little credit for getting some real value for a guy that looked like he wasn't even going to make the roster, for crying out loud. Let's talk about the other pickup. This one was interesting because it came on the heels of that play in the preseason game where essentially Tyrone Tracy just flat out misses his block on a blitz, and Jackson Dart gets drilled in the backfield, knocked to the ground, sent to the tent. I thought unnecessarily, but we could talk about that separately. But the fact of the matter is that right on the heels of that, all of a sudden, the Giants are out there searching for a running back. Najee Harris is out there. He's coming off the Achilles. Before you know it, a quick tryout, and bingo, he's in the lineup, and the Giants have signed him to a 1-year contract. So what do you make of the whole thing, and what do you think could Najee, contribute here to this Giants running back room?
Well, I think there are two separate issues at hand here. I'll start with Tracy. I feel a little bit bad. He's been drawn all of the ire of Giants fans for the past week. And it's somewhat deserved. It's the one thing you can't have happen is a completely missed block that blindsides a quarterback. Jackson Dart wasn't looking at all. He thought that side was covered and took a complete free rusher to the chest. And you just can't have that, period. I don't think that Tyrone Tracy's roster spot is in jeopardy by any means. I think he's still on a favorable deal. I think he's a versatile, athletic player that they like. And, for 2 out of 3 aspects of the game, the running and the receiving, I think he's pretty good. I think he's ahead of the curve on the receiving, and I think he's about an average runner right now with some good burst and some good vision. The pass blocking thing is something he's needed to work on. And I think that the addition of Najee Harris is more so like this is very serious, not he's jumped you on the depth chart.
Yeah,
or
more
now
like a
further.
warning shot, right? When you say,
like, we're taking this very seriously. This is important. You can't do this. Like, it's okay if you don't have a good block rep, but you can't completely miss your assignment and let your quarterback get absolutely hammered, which is what happened. Now, as to Najee, what he can bring, I think people are down on Najee in a way that's not necessary. This is a 4 consecutive year 1,000-yard rusher. Now, that's because he was force-fed carries in Pittsburgh, but he's also a little bit of Cam Scadaboo in that he's a physical, decisive downhill runner that will take on contact and average you about 3.9 yards per carry. Now, it's not explosive. That he definitely gets the cumulative yards from carries, right? And he's not going to be the lead back here. But I do think he can pass block. I think he can catch the ball exceptionally well. He can catch the ball.
Yep.
The yards after contact when he's not between the tackles, I think he can really knock guys on his ass. And he's surprisingly shifty for a guy his size as well. The tread on the tires, I think, is due to him. He's 28 years old. He's coming off of an Achilles tear, but last year with the Achilles tear, I still think that he's going to have something in the tank, and whether that means he's jumping back and forth between the practice squad and active roster, or if he's just going to be a 4th running back that they're going to have on the roster. You never know with John Harbaugh and their commitment to the run game this year. I think that it's important to note that last year during his Achilles tear is the only season that he didn't play all 17 games. This is a traditionally healthy back. So I think that he has something left in the tank to offer the Giants for sure.
And sometimes these players, they get a year off from a serious injury like this, and now their body really fully gets to recover from all the banging that they take, especially running backs who, a big guy like that who takes so many hits. It's just nice. Maybe there'll be a freshness to Najee once he gets back up to 100%. I know they're going to try to, sounds like, work him up very, very slowly. Another guy that is working his way towards 100%, and he's starting to wow people in practices. He joined the 11-on-11s a couple of days ago. Malik Neighbors, it looks like it's trending towards a week 1 appearance. The Giants still being pretty cagey. What do you make of it all?
I mean, it's funny, the roller coaster ride of following the Malik Neighbors injury, all off season, and even now as he's being ramped up, you're hearing beat writers say, like, I don't know, it's hard to read his body language if the leg is still bothering him or if it's not. I can't really tell. He says it doesn't, and it's just the dog in him coming out or something like that. I don't know. What I do know is that he's further along than I expected, and I kept a very pessimistic outlook because I'd rather be surprised and happy than surprised and disappointed because I set myself up for it. So I kept a pessimistic outlook because we saw what happened last year with Andrew Thomas. Joe Shane said they were targeting week 1 for him, and he was like, I'm listening to my body. Mm-hmm. He did not start week 1. I think it was week 4 Andrew Thomas started. So he is way further along. Him being active, not being put on the PUP list was a surprise. Being in the first training camp practice was a surprise. He's certainly being amped up. And a lot of the struggles that we've heard about the offense and finding receivers downfield for Jackson Dart, it's easy to get caught up in that and be caught up in Jackson Dart year 2, the sophomore slump, a new offense, in general, our receiving core, is it good? Is it bad? We forget that the win button is missing. Malik Neighbors is a win button. He's the guy who's open consistently all the time, and they are operating without that. So as we continue to watch the offense, keep in mind that all those struggles are tied to the best player on offense. The best skill player is not out there yet. And when he's out there, things are definitely going to change. Everyone's responsibilities are going to change. You'll draw different matchups. So you got number 2s drawing number 1 corners and stuff like that. All of that will change. So very, very good news so far. No setbacks that we've heard of. That's all good to hear.
Like week 1 to me, man. Man-Child Show with Boyd Green Digital at MC Show Digital. We are presented by our friends at Northeast Roofing Professionals. Today's video brought to you by our friends at Sharkies. You see the link right below us there. Please subscribe to the channel. If you're not already a subscriber, it's absolutely free. All right, 30 seconds from our sponsors, then we come back. Football Grump, I'm going to ask you this very direct question. Will Odell Beckham Jr. make the roster? We shall explore when we return. Stick around.
If you plan on throwing a party, whether it's a wedding, clam bake, birthday party, graduation party, a party, company picnic, oh, and did I mention clam bake? Sharkies is your party headquarters with 3 indoor options and a plethora of outdoor options as well. All in a park-like setting with a big stage and over 7,000 square feet of covered pavilion. So rain or shine, we've got you covered. Book your next party now. Go to sharkiesbanquets.com. Sharkies in Liverpool, making parties historic every single year.
All right, we are back. Man-Child Show with Boyd Green Digital, talking all things Giants inside the Giants with the Football Grump from the Giants Nation podcast, one of the big ones out there. You got to go check those guys out. We'll talk a little bit more later about what the Football Grump has going on in his life. We'll ask him on the way out of the interview today. But let's talk about what's going on in the Giants' life, and that is Odell Beckham Jr. He's certainly a lightning rod with the fans, and it really seems like that nostalgia is pouring through the veins of the fan base. They want to see this guy make the roster, but the Giants do have a numbers issue when it comes to these wide receivers. So give me your take. I'll ask you this very direct question. Do you think he's going to make the 53?
I think it's going to be tough for him, man. He's far down on the numbers chart, and he doesn't play specials, and that's going to hurt him. So, I mean, we kind of went through there's a number of offensive linemen that have to make this roster. You got your starting 5. You've got Marcus Bowe as your backup tackle. J.C. Davis is a draft pick. He's got to be there. So now you're at 7. You need a backup guard. Right now, that looks like it's Aaron Stinney. And you need a backup center, whether that's Lucas Patrick or Brian Hudson. We're getting up there now. Now we're looking at 9 offensive linemen. You're pretty much done there. Here are the receivers that are currently ahead of Beckham, and it's not even an argument. Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton because of the contract, Darnell Mooney because of the contract, Calvin Austin because he plays a different spot, Malachi Fields because he's a draft pick. You already got 5. I think Braxton Berrios had 2 punt returns, both for 15 yards in this first preseason game. I think it doesn't solidify anything, but that certainly makes him 6, in my opinion. That Odell Beckham is kind of 7th now and doesn't offer anything on special teams. So now he's found himself in a battle with someone like Dalen Cambry or something like that, because Dalen Cambry does offer you special teams value where he's getting on the field. Beckham, I think, has to have what I would like, honestly, for Beckham to have a fair shot at making this roster, because I think he deserves that, is to play with like the 2s and 1s in preseason week 2 and preseason week 3, because it's not really anything for me to see him burn, cornerback 3s on a roster, guys that are probably not making a roster. Like, I know Beckham can do that. I'm aware of who Odell Beckham is. You know what I mean? And we saw in the preseason game, he didn't have that many catches. He did have a really beautiful catch on a slant, and it, is off coverage, so he didn't have to beat anybody. But it's just the way he attacks the ball in the air for me. It's how he's always been. He goes up and gets it, just snatches it out of the air and gets upfield. They closed on him pretty quickly, so not a ton of yak. But then what we saw was, a busted coverage he was open on, didn't get targeted, but I expect Odell Beckham to beat busted coverage. And then he had a go route against 3s that Brandon Allen just didn't see him on, where he beat his guy. So I would like to see Beckham go up to the 2s and 1s, because right now I think it's an uphill battle for him.
I was going to ask, is there a clear wide receiver 2 on this roster for you? Who is it? I mean, is it Slayton? Is it Mooney? Is it someone else? Is it Fields? Who's WR2? We know who WR1 is. Who's WR2?
I don't think there is a clear wide receiver 2. I think you can make a good argument for Slayton or Mooney. They're kind of each other's comps in a certain sense. Mooney was brought in by Harbaugh. Slayton was already on a legacy contract from before Harbaugh. So if you want to slate Mooney above Slayton, that makes sense to me. But so far, Slayton's been actually the wide receiver 2. It's pretty clear that Malachi Fields is making a push for it. I thought that Fields, because of the nature of his limited route tree coming out of school and just, a general lack of experience, a general lack of speed to just give you the immediate separation, he would have a different role. But he's making a good argument. He had a 50-yard catch from Jackson Dart in practice today. He had the touchdown in the preseason game, and then he had 2 other catches that looked pretty good in the preseason game. He's making a push for it. I think it's a good thing that there isn't a clear wide receiver 2, because when I look at this depth chart, I see a lot of guys that feel like they're in the same camp. So it looks like a general competition, and it will be genuine who comes out on top, because so far John Harbaugh seems to have been running a meritocracy.
Here's a direct question. Is Jackson Dart, in your mind, a franchise quarterback, or is he going to definitively be a franchise quarterback? This is the magic bullet question for all us Giant fans, because obviously that changes the trajectory of your organization if he is.
Well, I'm not Karnak, so I can't predict the future here. But in my opinion, what Jackson Dart is a franchise quarterback, because I think there are things that you need. And, you have to have the competitive edge, which I'm pretty sure we agree he has. You have to be a hard worker, which I think we all agree that he is. The fact that he was able to get on the field as early as he did last year, I don't care that Brian Daboll catered the offense to him, whatever. He still got on the field. This is like the 20th pick in the draft. This is not 1, 2, or 3. So he fought his way onto the field last year. I think he's a leader. I think he can make all the throws, even if some of the deeper passes aren't as pretty. I think that those are the qualities that you need. Also, I mean, I guess you can throw this in there. You don't need this to be a franchise quarterback, but it certainly helps. He has the improv ability, the it factor, the intangible qualities that just make you elect a playmaker. So he has all the tools there. Will he become a franchise quarterback? It's going to depend on his health. If he can keep himself upright and out of the blue tent, is definitely going to. If he can adjust to a new offense, he's never really operated under center. He's putting in the work now to get that done. These are the things that are going to have to change. He has to continue to develop to become that, but all the tools are certainly there.
All right. Preseason game 1 over in the books. What stood out to you about preseason game number 1, whether it's players, whether it's units, whether it's John Harbaugh's coaching? What stood out?
Well, I think 2 things stood out, but they're both on the defense and they go hand in hand. I think the corners operated slightly better than I had expected for Colton Hood, a second-round rookie with only 1 real year of college experience, and Deonte Banks, who Giants fans are more than familiar with. They performed slightly better than I expected, which, was not great, by the way, but I was expecting worse. The run defense, though, I mean, right off the bat, first play, Darius Alexander is someone that former 3rd-round pick. They're all looking to get a look at some improvement specifically in the run game. And first play of the game was like a 12-yard run. Darius Alexander's on his back. That to me was eye-opening, that we are right where we were last year with that. And I think, John Harbaugh seems to have, there are consequences to your performance. So we saw Brandon Allen had a very bad game as quarterback. They brought in another quarterback. Tyrone Tracy misses a block. Najee Harris shows up. Darius Alexander did not look good in run defense. We saw in joint practices, Chauncey Golston has moved inside now. And he has that like defensive end sort of defensive tackle flexibility. They moved him inside now. So he's with Darius Alexander actively demoted. So that's what I came away with week 1.
Yeah, Golston is a guy too. I mean, I thought last year he truly underperformed in the Giants system. Maybe this new system gives him a little bit of life because he was a very effective player for the Cowboys.
I liked the signing. I thought it was a really smart signing. And I mean, let's be honest. I think the entire system defensively did not perform well last year. We have playmakers. We have a good pass rush. The only player that you could say outperformed the system was Brian Burns. And if you watch all of the sacks that he got, and I'm not trying to take away because this does happen when you get a lot of sacks, but some of them are freebies, So I think in general, the system did not help players shine. It didn't accentuate their best attributes, and it didn't cover up their worst attributes. It was kind of just a lineup and play defense. So I think that this regime is getting the most out of the roster that they have.
A lot of Giant fans hate Matt Nagy. I don't know why. This poor guy hasn't even gotten a chance as the offensive coordinator. He's been a head coach in the league, wasn't really all that awful, when push really comes to shove. He's been in the game forever, and yet Giant fans hate him. Do you hate him? What's your thought on Matt Nagy as the OC this year?
I don't hate him. I would certainly say I don't know who Matt Nagy is, and I think that that's some of the problem, right? He's operated kind of only with Andy Reid. When he was on his own as head coach, he had an offensive coordinator. It's hard to say what was and what wasn't Matt Nagy, and he goes back to the Chiefs. I don't really know what to think. I haven't seen anything in practices or preseason that are like, oh, okay, this system, I can see these receivers getting open. They're doing really creative stuff. We haven't seen any of that yet, but they're installing with a new with a quarterback that's new to operating under center. There's certainly an emphasis on the run first. I'm not sure who said it, but someone at the podium, I think it was Nagy, said that they were trying to get Dart through the uncomfortable stuff first. They're not completely throwing out last year's shotgun offense. They just don't see the need to work on it right now when they have other things to work on. For me, Matt Nagy, one of the things I really remember with him in Chicago with the Bears was being creative, putting defensive tackles in at fullback, having them catch passes at the goal line, having them, run the ball in at the goal line. The stories, there were literally articles written about him going into defensive meetings and interrupting the defensive meeting to pull guys out to bring them to the offensive meeting. So that's what I think of as truly what I know about Matt Nagy. That's him. As far as the general offensive system, I don't know what is him. So I have to see, and preseason, I'm not going to judge based on preseason, especially without Malik Neighbors out there. So sure. I want to see, I will have to reserve judgment till the regular season personally.
I mean, it's a three-headed monster anyway. I know Nagy's going to call the plays, but the fact that he's got Callahan over there working on the passing game, he's got Greg Roman, a proven guy on the run game. It's almost like this thing is a three-headed monster. My biggest fear is that this whole thing doesn't confuse Jackson Dart instead of pull it all together, because they have three very, very bright minds working together here theoretically to put together some kind of offense that's going to work for the Giants this year.
I would even add a fourth in there with Willie Taggart with a running backs coach.
Sure.
I mean, that's a former offensive coordinator and a college head coach. So they have a lot of experience there. Yep. And I think why I'm not worried about that is because John Harbaugh really is a CEO. I do believe, without seeing it, I have faith, I guess is what you're saying. What I'm saying is that there is a singular vision despite all the cooks in the kitchen, and that they are all working towards a singular vision. They're all reporting back to John Harbaugh. He's the one, he grades practices, which is insanity. I don't know that it's going to confuse Jackson Dart, but I do think that we will not have all these cooks in the kitchen next year. I do think that maybe there'll be someone that shakes loose at the end of this and more of a unified person in charge next year. That's what I'm expecting anyway. What do you think? Is that a crazy thought?
No, I don't think that's a crazy thought at all. And I think sometimes when you're hired as a coach, you got to look at who's ever available at the time, and you don't really have a chance to go out and recruit. John Harbaugh will have all of this next offseason, if he wants to make some changes, to go out and recruit guys, and he'll have that full offseason to do it. I think when you get hired as Harbaugh did, you got to get your act together very, very quickly. And we all know he wanted Monken. All right, Monken got a head coaching job. You're not going to turn that down. So, okay, he had to figure out, and he went out and got this three-headed monster, and I think there's a good chance it's going to work. So I'm pretty optimistic about what the Giants are going to bring to the table offensively. But, man, Nagy just gets beat by the fans, man. It's like, stop beating on this guy. And I listened to him, and he seems like a really bright guy. I think he's very good with the media. He really handles himself like a head coach. I think he does a good job.
I mean, there's very few dummies in this. These are the 1%, the players and the coaches. Right. So I don't know if I agree. I'm sure he is a smart guy. I got to see what actually happens right now. As far as I'm concerned, all the evidence is just install. I got to see an actual game, and then I'll form an opinion from there. I guess I'm glad that Giants fans are going after Matt Nagy because they don't like it because, they don't really know what he is. He came from the Andy Reid offense. It's not really an offense. It's Andy Reid's. I'd rather them be mad at what they don't know is going on than be mad at Greg Roman, because I feel like the Greg Roman hate is unfounded where I get where people get frustrated. He overstays his welcome. They stick to the run game in situations where you want the explosives, and it's easy to point at that when you're not winning. But right. I think I saw a completely different run game for preseason week 1 than what I'm used to with this Giants. They actually looked like they moved people, and they only added one dude. I mean, also preseason week 1, you didn't have Andrew Thomas. You have Marcus Bowe playing left tackle, and you don't have John Michael Schmitz, who had a concussion at the time. Lucas Patrick, the backup center, is dealing with a leg issue. So you had a third-string center out there, and Brian Hudson, who I think was an undrafted free agent. So you're not even dealing with the best 5 out there when I'm talking about this, and a rookie in Francis Maui-Noa. So I think the world of Francis Maui-Noa, but this is first live action, so I would expect him to not be perfect out there. And I saw a much improved offensive line personally.
I'll tell you what's driving me crazy football grump, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope it doesn't turn out to be, because, look, when the dust settled, I remember draft night when I was sitting there and Reese falls into the Giants' lap, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Fantastic. Please don't even wait. Just bring the card up. Do not, when someone drops like that you thought, a lot of people thought was the best defensive player in the draft, just please turn in the card and go get him. And the Giants did it. And I was like, all right, Joe Shane, you just scored a brownie point from the man-child here, right? And then all of a sudden, and working our way down to 10, and they're on the board at 10. And I'm like, oh my God, Caleb Downs is still on the board. They could walk away with both, these Ohio State pillars coming out of that great program. The defense has been the biggest issue. If Abdul Carter gets his act together, you could have 3 dynamos on this defense. Wow, the thought behind it. And then the Giants turn in Francis Maui-Noa, and then you get a chance to marinate and think about it and hear the press conferences, and you're like, maybe they're right. This offensive line, it's been such a mess for so many years, and it was showing some improvement last year. Maybe this was the right thing to do. But now I hear all the noise. I know it's preseason. I know it's training camp. I know it's mostly hitting your own guys. But Caleb Downs is apparently being compared. He was this morning on one of the ESPN talk shows. They were comparing him to Ronnie Lott, and I was like, oh my God, please! Are we going to pass first on Micah Parsons, who to me was potentially the next Lawrence Taylor, and now we're going to pass on the next Ronnie Lott, so that we can fill in a guy in the interior of the offensive line who's not even playing the position he played in college, which makes it even just that much more aggravating in some weird way. Give me your thoughts about all that. I know I put out a lot of stuff. Give me your thoughts about that whole thing in the blender.
No, I don't think that you're crazy at all. And this is going to be something that's probably going to be talked about for a couple of years as these players continue to develop, whether, Arvell Reese and David Bailey, I think are going to be compared for a very long time because the Jets went with Bailey instead of Reese. That was certainly a choice. And Francis Maui-Noah and Caleb Downs. I'm a big Caleb Downs fan. I don't hate the pick for Francis Maui-Noah, though. I don't think you should be picking for need, but at the same time, the Giants definitely needed to seriously address the offensive line. I like what they did, too. They took a tackle that was, I still think could hang at right tackle in the NFL. They moved him inside where I think he can be dominant. And he's a bully, man. He's an absolute bully. Caleb Downs is another guy that I think is excellent. I would have loved him back there. I went on for, probably hours worth of recorded film of me talking in pre-draft, on the draft stream, afterwards when we didn't take him. I think that he's transformative in the back. I think he's incredibly smart. He was incredibly smart as a freshman safety. He understands everything that's going on in front of him. He reacts. A lot was made of his workout and what he's able to do physically. Some of that stuff doesn't matter when you know what's happening and you can react faster than other people. Those hundredths of a second in terms of what you can do physically don't matter when you react tenths of a second faster, So I think he's all over the field. The Giants could have transformed their defense with Arvell Reese and Caleb Downs, but in my opinion, I kind of think you can live without a transformative Ed Reed at safety, and you can get two really good safeties and be okay with that for a while. I also think that you need to score points. This team needs to score points. They need to start trending in the direction of scoring 26 to 30 points per game if they want to win games. You can't end up losing games 13-7 every single week. It doesn't help you. I think at the end of the day, you have to get yourself in a position, especially when you have a rookie quarterback, you got to keep him upright. They have Jackson Dart. I think the right move was to keep Jackson Dart in a position where he can be Jackson Dart and he can learn a new offense and he can make mistakes. He should be afforded the ability to make mistakes without it ruining a season. I don't want to do to Jackson Dart what was done with Daniel Jones, which, to quote John Mara, was, we did everything we could to ruin this kid. So I think at a certain point, you pay the penance for years of screwing up, and you have to make a choice between a Caleb Downs and a Francis Maui-Noah, and you have to make the right choice at a certain point. So I think that's all that really was, is paying the price for years of malpractice.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is essentially a makeup for the bad pick of Evan Neal. I mean,
sure.
You gotta reverse history at some point. I suppose, Football Grump, I just still sting from Dave Gettleman, a guy that never moved down in the draft, suddenly deciding to move down, taking Kadarius Toney and leaving Micah Parsons out there for the Cowboys. When the Giants had a need for an edge, they needed a guy like him. Everybody projected Giants are taking him if he's available. And then they trade the pick away, and Dallas gets a guy that's really been so far a transcendent talent. We'll see how he continues with his career now in Green Bay. But I don't know. That one still stings. I hope Downs doesn't sting like Parsons. And in both cases, the Cowboys, we know, right? We don't like that. We don't like that at all.
If I could hand you an ice cream cone of happiness here, Dallas Cowboys weren't able to do much with Micah Parsons. They are still living in 1995, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I still like Parsons, though. I'm being awful nice in Giants blue. All right, let's quickly talk about the preseason game number 2 Saturday, 4:00 against the Dolphins. What are you expecting? What would you like to see with the Giants here? Give me your thoughts on preseason game number 2 and what needs to get accomplished.
But first and foremost, I would need to see a better run defense, period. Devon Achane could run all over this team. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a running back is only as good as his offensive line, but I absolutely cannot see a repeat performance than what we saw run defensively last week. And if that means personnel changes, like Chauncey Golston in with the ones for defensive tackle over Darius Alexander, then that's what that means. I don't really care. I'm looking for results personally. That's number one. Number two, generally speaking, domination. This is not, in any way to throw shade at another team or whatever, but it's a fact. The Miami Dolphins are in a rebuild mode right now. They didn't just replace their coach. They're not in the exact same position that the Giants are, even though the Giants just hired a new coach as well. And there's like $60 million worth of their cap space is going to players not on the team. So this is a game that they should look very good in. And I want to see that. Generally speaking, other than that, in the more specifics, I think I'd like to see certain guys move up a little bit in the depth chart. Guys like J.C. Davis, I thought played a really, really good game with the 3s at left tackle. I want to see him move up to left tackle with the 2s. I want to see Marcus Bowe at right tackle with the 2s. I think if Marcus Bowe has a future starting at tackle, it will be at right tackle, not left. He obviously is a swing tackle right now. He's got to play both sides, but I'd like to see him in a role where he's at right tackle because he only played one game that way, I think, last year in Jermaine Illumina's spot. So I'd like to see that. But generally speaking, domination over a bad team.
All right. By the way, Brian Burns claiming after today's joint practice that the Giant defense dominated and they got somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 sacks. So if you buy the rhetoric, all right, in a kind of a scrimmagey kind of situation, sounds like the Giants defense is playing some pretty good football, at least in these joint practices. All right, I'll leave it to you to plug what you've been up to, Football Grump. Tell us about what's going on in the Giants Nation podcast, any of the other ventures that you're into, because I know you're pretty busy covering the Giants.
Man, it has been a very, very busy summer. Giants Nation does not rest. Let me tell you that. We've been doing live shows all over the place. We were up in Binghamton, New York, as part of a little live event that we did where we allow people to put in a bid to find a location for us to do a live show at. We did that show as well. So we have next year's is in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. So next year we'll be out there in the summer. We were up there for license plate guy hosts a charity softball game this year. Brian Burns was the guy running the charity. And that was in somewhere in Rockland County. I'm not sure what town, Paloma, maybe. It was a huge event. Beckham was there. Malik Neighbors was there. There were all kinds of players there. Dart was super competitive playing softball and dodgeball. That was really, really cool. We did a show there. And then we just did a show up with the Sussex County Miners minor league baseball team in Sussex County, New Jersey. Really, really cool. They invited us out there. They're a huge sponsor of the show. That was really cool. Try and do as many things because Bobby and I are located out of the area. So whenever we're up there, try and do as many fan things as possible. And I got married. At the end of July. So that was really cool. That was a bit of a Giants Nation moment as well. Bobby was there. Cranky Fan, my co-host for the Just Giants podcast, was there as well. He's my best man. So we were kind of all over the place. And what's the last thing we did? Oh, we did a live show from Big Blue Crew's Man Cave for the preseason game. So that was up on YouTube as well. The live show, you could see his Man Cave is insane. It would bring a tear to your eye. Let me tell you, man, he's got everything you can imagine and all of it's signed.
There are some wild people out there that collect memorabilia like there's no tomorrow, and they really live and breathe it. Good for them. I love it. I have a little bit of it, but not anything.
I know it's not really my game either, but I like to like that there. That's an original newspaper from the Star Ledger behind me from when they won the Super Bowl. I make my own memorabilia.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Nice. Cheaper that way too, but
yes.
A lot cheaper. All right. Football Grump, always appreciate it. You're always so generous with your time and always love going back and forth with you. Had a great time as usual. So thanks again.
Thanks for having me. Always available for you.